Mukuda is a boring office worker who's suddenly transported to a world where he gets a boring ability and is thrown out of the kingdom. However, he comes into a contact with a legendary beast and becomes insanely powerful. Some people are suddenly teleported in front of a princess and two mages who happily say that the heroes have responded to their call. One wants to appraise their ability and asks them to save the kingdom of Reiziger. However, they realize another man has been summoned with them and see that Mukuda Tsuyoshi's unique skill is online grocery, shocking him. The mage suggests to Mukuda that he should talk to the king about this since he won't be able to fight for them. Later, Mukuda tells the king he just wants to live a normal life and his ability isn't fit for fighting, so the king gives him 20 gold coins and lets him go. Mukuda quickly buys some different clothes to fit in and decides to get out of this country soon since he doesn't want any trouble. He rents a room at an inn and checks out his skill. He's surprised by how useful it is, and happily says he won't run out of food as long as he has this, so he just needs to get out now. He goes to the guild and asks for an escort party. The receptionist suggests paying them 8 gold coins and he reluctantly agrees, so she calls over a man named Werner. He agrees to escort Mukuda since the traveling services have been closed due to the war, and they decide to leave the next day. In the morning, Werner introduces Mukuda to the rest of his party. Vincent, Rita, Ramon, and Franca. They set out and are stunned by how good Mukuda's cooking is. On the way, they run into a red boar and swiftly take it down, so Mukuda makes some stew from it at night, and unexpectedly sees that his food also provides stat buffs to anyone who eats it. Later, they're close to the end of their journey, so Mukuda makes some steak for them, and they happily ask for seconds because of how good it is. However, a giant Fenrir suddenly appears behind Mukuda and demands to be fed. Scared, Mukuda hurriedly gives it the remaining meat, but he keeps asking for more, so Mukuda has to cook for him for a while. Once the Fenrir is finally fed, he says he has taken a liking to Mukuda and wants to make a familiar contract with him. Mukuda initially tries to decline, but he's too scared by the Fenrir's intimidating gaze, so he nervously agrees. Once they've formed the contract, the Fenrir says he expects 3 meals a day. Shocking Mukuda, the Fenrir asks for a name now that they're in a contract, and Mukuda initially suggests some dog names. But the Fenrir says they're too belittling for him, so Mukuda decides to go with Fel. The next morning, as they continue their journey, Werner is worried that the higher-up in the kingdom will be all over Mukuda since he has a contract with Fel. So Fel says he'll destroy anyone who gets in his way and asks when lunch will be served, so they stop. As Mukuda gets ready to cook, he remarks that most of the boar meat is gone and tells Fel to go hunt something down if he wants to eat meat, so he agrees and comes back with a B-rank rockbird that Werner doubts his entire party would be able to defeat. After lunch, they arrive at the gate to the kingdom, so Werner decides to go ahead without them and talk things out. The guards instantly surround them when they enter and ask if the Fenrir is really in a contract with Mukuda, so he confirms this and says he's responsible for anything they do. The head guard agrees and lets them in. Inside, Werner suggests Mukuda to register at the Merchant and Adventurers Guild to not have to pay the fee every time, so Mukuda agrees, and they part ways. He first goes to the Merchant Guild and registers before cooking food for Fel. The next day, he returns to the Merchant Guild to sell some items. But when the receptionist takes a look, she hurriedly goes into a room and asks him to come with her to meet the guildmaster. The guildmaster tells Mukuda that they have never seen salt and pepper of this quality here, and it's so good that it could be given the royalty as a gift. He says he wants to buy these from him for 15 gold coins, and as Mukuda is reflecting in shock, the guildmaster thinks it's too low, and increases the price to 17 instead, which is insane, since Mukuda bought the salt and pepper for only 5 copper coins. Once that's done, he registers at the Adventurers Guild and picks up a request to gather some medicinal herbs. He heads back to Fel and decides to check his stats as he's preparing lunch, and he's shocked to see that Fel's stats are basically maxed. Mukuda heads out to gather herbs for his request, and Fel decides to hunt while he's working, but he's worried about whether or not Mukuda will stay safe while he's gone, so he casts a barrier on him and rushes off. Mukuda uses appraisal and easily manages to gather the herbs in no time, so he decides to start preparing food. Fel returns with a rockbird since he liked the teriyaki Mukuda made earlier, and says there's some more on the edge of the forest. Mukuda decides to make some spaghetti for him, and Fel is surprised by how much he likes it. He heads back to see how many beasts Fel hunted, and is shocked to see a small mountain of crazy powerful monsters. They head back to the town, and the butcher is shocked to see just how many A and B ranked monsters are present in the pile. Mukuda says he just wants the meat from these monsters, and wants to sell everything else, so the butcher agrees to have everything ready by tomorrow morning. The next morning, Mukuda is shocked to see that he's gotten 202 gold coins from the monsters, as well as some magic stones from the beasts. As Makuta is heading back, he remarks that he shouldn't stay in one place for too long and decides to leave this town. They decide to sleep in some ruins, and since they've earned so much money, Makuta decides to get some premium ingredients. He makes several different kinds of meat as well as black wagyu for Fel. Fel is stunned by how good it is, and after eating it, he says he feels really powerful, so Makuta decides to check his stats and is shocked to see that Fel's stats have risen by 50%. Fel goes out to hunt and effortlessly takes down several strong monsters. Makuta peacefully goes to sleep, but he wakes up the next day to find several mountains of powerful monsters. Fel explains that he could easily take down all the monsters with a single attack, so Makuta decides that Japanese black wagyu beef is eternally off the menu. As Fel is eating, Makuta asks Fel how he mostly fights other beasts, so Fel says he uses his claws to attack, but he can use magic as well, and reveals that he's been blessed by the goddess, Ninrir, so he mostly uses wind magic. Makuta asks if he can use magic too, and checks his stats to see that he does have some magic. He tries to cast a spell, but it doesn't work. So Fel says he doesn't need to just think about, he also has to let the magic flow through him. Makuta realizes what he means and is surprised to see that he can cast a fireball, but it's not really strong. Fel says they need to get him some proper practice and takes him to a goblin camp. Makuta is too scared to actually attack since there are too many of them, so Fel howls to catch their attention, and Makuta desperately starts running away from the goblins. As they're chasing him, he keeps flinging fireballs and manages to take most of them out after a while, but he wearily collapses and tells Fel to take care of the rest of them. Later, Makuta wakes up in front of Fel and begs whatever goddess is listening to him for blessings as well. Later, when they reach a town, knights once again surround them. But Makuta hurriedly explains that Fel is his familiar and shows them his guild cards. In the town, he decides to buy a map to explore and arrives at a pub. He sits down with some adventurers and they reveal that they actually have a map. They agree to give him theirs since they already have one just for 1 gold coin, so Makuta agrees. However, after they leave, other adventurers in the pub start laughing at Makuta and reveal that this map can be bought at the Adventurers Guild for just 1 silver coin. Later, Makuta sadly admits it's a dog-eat-dog world, and he and Fel head out on their journey. Fel and Makuta stop at a lake to fish, and Makuta is wondering how he should hunt fish when Fel uses lightning magic to shock the water, instantly killing a ton of fish. After they've eaten, Makuta finds a slime near Tem, so Fel tells him that slimes aren't dangerous and just eat anything they come across, so Makuta gives it some trash and thanks it for helping them. When the slime starts acting friendly, Fel says it has chosen Makuta as its master and has officially become his familiar, so Makuta decides to name it Sui. The next morning, Makuta tries practicing earth magic, but he has trouble controlling it, so Fel suggests he should practice by fighting monsters. But Makuta wants to stick to safer training. While resting beside Sui, he notices that it's gotten bigger, probably because of the otherworld food he's been feeding it. Later, Makuta cooks meat for himself, Fel, and Sui too, since it's just been eating garbage. The next day, Fel tells Makuta that the wind goddess Ninrir wants to bless him in exchange for weekly offerings of sweets from his world. She can't give him the same blessing Fel has, but she'll grant him Ninrir's modest blessing, which protects him from non-fatal status effects and boosts his magic control. Surprised, Makuta agrees and learns that he can pray anywhere as long as he's sincere. After praying, Makuta receives the blessing, and Ninrir happily eats the sweets he offered her. Later, Makuta practices Stone Bullet again, finally hitting his target, though it drains his energy. Fel returns and demands some sweets, and as Makuta is giving him some, he's unexpectedly contacted by Ninrir, who asks for more sweets. Makuta remarks that he feels like he's being harassed, but he complies. Fel sees that he's really dedicated to praying and tells him to get on his back so they can leave. On their way, Makuta says he's definitely gotten better with his Stone Bullet, so Fel mutters that he'll take him there after all. Fel takes Makuta to a dungeon so he can train his earth magic. He promises to keep him safe with a barrier but won't step in during fights. Before entering, Makuta makes a meal, explaining that food from his world gives temporary stat boosts. After eating, he checks his status and sees his stats have increased by about 20%. Inside the dungeon, Fel sets up the barrier and he, Makuta, and Sui start exploring. Sui ruins into a wild slime and easily melts it with acid, while Makuta practices Stone Bullet and manages to defeat several more slimes. Fel explains that monsters who die in dungeons turn into nutrients that sustain the dungeon itself, surprising him. A while later, they run into a pack of kobolds, and although he's scared at first, Makuta calms himself and defeats them with Stone Bullet, but Fel warns him not to get overconfident just because of a small victory. As they reach the final floor, they face a group of more than 10 kobolds. Makuta panics, but Fel reminds him he has the barrier and Sui's support. They start fighting, And after they've defeated the group, the Kobold King suddenly appears, so Mukuta tries to hold it off with stone bullets while retreating. However, the king's power starts cracking the barrier, so Mukuta wearily braces himself since he's out of mana. However, Sui suddenly attacks the king with acid and takes it down before Mukuta collapses from exhaustion and later wakes up outside the dungeon with Fel and Sui beside him. Sui happily tells him he learned to talk after leveling up, and when Mukuta checks, he learns that both he and Sui are now level 7, and he's mastered earth magic. Fel admits he lied about the barrier's weakness to push Mukuta to grow stronger, and Mukuta cooks food for them all. During dinner, Sui calls Fel Uncle Fel, making Mukuta laugh and annoying Fel, but he embarrassingly agrees to let him keep calling him that. Fel, Sui, and Mukuta travel through Griffin and Orthros territory to reach their next destination more quickly. Along the way, they're attacked by a group of young Orthros, but Fel easily defeats them and they decide to rest for the night. The next morning, they discover some healing mushrooms nearby, and Fel explains that they're edible and often used for medicine, so Mukuta and Sui head into the forest to collect them. But Sui starts eating the mushrooms on his own. Sui suddenly starts glowing, and when Mukuta checks his status, he learns that Sui has gained the ability Healing Potion Creation, so he hurriedly buys some plastic bottles and asks Sui to fill them with the healing liquid. When he does, Fel explains that Sui is a rare kind of slime since it's intelligent enough to create healing potions. After 3 days of traveling, they run into a talking griffin that challenges Fel to a duel, hoping to prove himself and become the leader of his pack. Fel accepts and easily defeats the griffin, leaving him badly injured. Feeling sorry for him, Mukuta asks Sui to make a healing potion and gives it to the wounded griffin. Once healed, Mukuta kindly praises him since he managed to scratch Fel, so the grateful griffin calls his pack, becomes their new leader, and offers Mukuta a feather as a token of gratitude, promising that no griffin will ever attack them. The next day, they leave the forest and approach the kingdom of Leonhardt, where they find a caravan under attack by thieves. Fel quickly rushes in and howls. He warns the thieves that he'll kill them if they move, and tells them to drop their weapons if they understand, so they quickly comply. The bodyguards quickly tie up the thieves, and the owner of the caravan, Lambert, thanks Mukuta. He says they're on their way to the city of Carolina, so Mukuta asks if they can tag along with them, and Lambert agrees, saying he'd feel much more at ease with everyone on their side. As Mukuta, Fel and Sui are on the way with Lambert. He overhears Lambert's men talking about Fel's strength, and realizes that if nobles discovered a Fenrir was traveling with him, they would surely try to capture Fel, so he decides to stay cautious. That night, he takes Fel and Sui away from the group to avoid revealing his powers, and as he's preparing food, the smell reaches Lambert's men, so they ask for some, and Mukuta agrees. In exchange for the meal, they volunteer to keep the lookout at night, and they reach Carolina in the morning. Lambert proudly tells Mukuta his family has been merchants there for generations, and invites him to visit his shop later. At the Adventurers Guild, Mukuta learns his guild card was deactivated because he didn't complete enough quests. The receptionist explains that F-rank adventurers get 3 months to complete quests, which also come with better rewards and experience, so Mukuta re-registers and shows Sui as his new familiar. Before selling monster materials, Lambert's men go with Mukuta to the guild's market. The butcher is amazed by the rare monsters Mukuta brought, and one of the men even suspects Fel might actually be a Fenrir, and everyone is stunned to hear that Mukuta used high-grade monster meat for the karage. One of the men, Lars, suggests they stay at the Griffin's Inn, and they rent rooms there. The next day, Mukuta decides to take on quests to raise his rank. Even though he wants to choose a simple job, Fel convinces him to accept a goblin hunting quest instead. With Sui's help, Mukuta defeats several goblins and collects their right ears before Sui goes wild and effortlessly takes out an entire horde on his own. Checking his stats, Mukuta learns Sui gained the proliferation skill, which lets him divide into multiple slimes. After that, Mukuta makes them all food and wonders if this is really alright since they finished the quest in a single day. Mukuta goes to the Adventurers Guild to report that he's finished his mission. One of the staff members tells him that the guild master, Willem, wants to see him because of how well he did. Willem praises Mukuta for doing such an amazing job on the quest and says the royal palace has informed them that they'll let Mukuta stay in the kingdom as long as he and his familiars help out in emergencies. To reward them, Willem immediately promotes them to C rank, but he asks Mukuta and Fel to choose tougher A and S rank quests to help the guild's reputation, and also assures Mukuta that other adventurers won't bother them anymore. Before leaving, Mukuta asks if he can sell more monsters to the guild, so Willem takes him to his usual butcher, but the man explains they don't have enough money to buy rare creatures like the Chimera or Orthros, but he agrees to buy Mukuta's other monsters instead. The next morning, Makuta heads back to the guild to pick up his C-rank guild card, and Willem reminds him that he has 6 months to complete crank missions and pays him over 1,900 gold coins, shocking Makuta. Next, Willem gives him a new mission, to hunt a metal lizard and a herd of bloody hornbulls, so Makuta decides to start tomorrow so he can spend the day exploring Carolina. He stops at Lambert's shop to buy a new bag for Sui, and a few other items since even though he could use his online grocery skill, he prefers to buy things locally so people don't get suspicious. Even though Makuta wants to pay, Lambert insists on selling him everything for free, and before Makuta leaves, Lambert asks him to sell him any black serpent materials he might find. That night, Makuta cooks dinner for Fel and Sui again, and quietly eats his own meal after they fall asleep. He also offers Ninrir her usual sweets as thanks, and the other goddesses find out about Ninrir's secret food deal with Makuta, and Fel head out to hunt the metal lizard for their next quest, and after taking a closer look, Fel realizes it's actually a mithril lizard, a rare monster that gained a metallic body by eating mithril ore. Fel easily kills it with his Thunderbolt spell, and Makuta stores the corpse in his inventory, but he also discovers some leftover mithril ore and considers using it to make armor. However, Fel destroys the ore, saying his magical barrier is enough protection, and drags Makuta out of the cave to continue with their next target, the horned bull. A while later, they come across a herd of horned bulls and Sui quickly defeating several of them. After collecting the bodies, Makuta serves lunch and shares his drink with Fel and Sui, who excitedly ask for more. They all return to the butcher's shop, and the butcher and Willem are shocked to see the whole mithril lizard, so Willem decides to present it as a tribute to the royal palace and says he'll inform the king about Makuta's mithril mine discovery. He asks Makuta to keep it secret and promises he'll be rewarded generously. However, Willem and the butcher are shocked when Makuta shows them the large number of horned bulls he defeated. After dinner, Fel reminds him to send sweets to Ninrir, and when Makuta does, the other goddesses unexpectedly contact him, saying they also want to bless him in exchange for sweets. Thus, Makuta accepts blessings from the goddesses of fire and earth since their powers fit his magic style. The goddess of water, Ruka, sadly admits her powers wouldn't help him, so Makuta suggests that she can bless Sui instead, and she happily agrees, so Makuta sends sweets to all 3 of them. Once that's done, he wearily lies down on his bed and mutters that the goddesses' association is way too annoying. The next morning, Makuta is surprised by how much stronger his spells have gotten, and inwardly thanks the goddesses before telling Sui that he should give water spells a try as well. Both he and Fel are shocked by how strong Sui is, and while Makuta practices, Fel decides to go hunting. Fel returns later to see that Makuta has made a house using earth magic, and says he brought back a black serpent since Lambert asked for it. He and Sui instantly start asking for food, so Makuta mutters that he's really proud of the house and asks if they can't say a single word of praise. Fel, Makuta, and Sui stop by the butcher's shop to collect their payment for the meat they sold earlier. Makuta also asks the butcher to skin the black serpent so he can use its hide and meat. Later, he cooks a new recipe using the horned bull meat and visits Lambert to sell the black serpent's skin. Lambert offers him 50 gold coins, and Makuta gladly agrees before asking for Lambert's opinion on some beauty products he made using materials from his online grocery. Stunned, Lambert says he'd like to buy them as an anniversary gift for his wife. Marie, and when Makuta asks whether bathtubs exist in this world, Lambert shows him one and tells him about a bathtub craftsman nearby. Before leaving, Makuta gives Lambert some samples of his beauty products to try out. The next morning, Makuta returns to Lambert's shop and is surprised to see Marie there as well. They explain that although Lambert planned to surprise her, Marie has already tried the products and loves them. Lambert then asks if Makuta would allow him to sell the items in his store, and since Makuta doesn't have a shop of his own, he agrees to supply them to Lambert wholesale. Later, he tells Fel and Sui about this and heads to the Adventurers Guild to see Willem, who has just come back. Willem tells Makuta that the royal palace approved the Furi mithril mine deal and gave him a reward of 5,800 gold coins, but they're interrupted when a guild worker hurriedly rushes in and informs them that wyverns are attacking adventurers outside the city. Makuta offers Willem his high-grade healing potions, and everyone is shocked by how good they are. As the wounded adventurers are treated, Willem issues a wyvern subjugation quest for all C-rank and higher adventurers, but before anyone else can respond, Fel declares that he, Makuta, and Sui will handle it themselves. Willem agrees, even though Makuta isn't too happy with that, and Fel and Sui effortlessly wipe out the wyverns. Later, Makuta cooks them a victory meal, and they happily eat it while back in Carolina. The receptionist asks Willem if he thinks Makuta and the others are alright, so he worryingly says he's not sure even Fel can handle so many wyverns at once, but they just need to believe in them and wait. Makuta, Fel, and Sui return to the guild after taking down the wyverns, and when Willem asks why they were gone so long, Fel casually explains that they stopped to eat since the fight wasn't difficult. Later, Mukuta sells half of the wyverns to the guild because they don't have enough money to purchase all of them. Back at the inn, he offers the regular sweets to the goddesses to keep their blessings, and each goddess uses magic to whisper directly into his ear, asking for special desserts just for themselves. However, Mukuta refuses and says he'll just send them a big batch of sweets at once. The next morning, Mukuta and Fel walk through the town and overhear people gossiping about them, so he embarrassingly decides that they should head to another city now. Before heading out, they stop by a shop to buy a bathtub, and once they're outside, Fel runs off to hunt while Mukuta and Sui relax and take a bath in the forest. Later, Mukuta cooks a meal with wyvern meat, but Fel still hasn't come back, and when he finally returns, he's dragging a huge earth dragon, saying it was more exciting to fight than the wyverns. Mukuta panics and tells Fel off for bringing something so troublesome and useless, and the two keep arguing until Mukuta and Sui make Fel take a bath before dinner. Once he's clean, they enjoy their meal together, and Mukuta declares that Fel must bathe twice a month from now on. The next day, both the butcher and Willem refuse to buy the earth dragon, explaining that its materials are too rare and require specialists to handle. However, Willem says there's someone he knows that might be able to butcher this dragon for him. Excited, Mukuta asks where he needs to go, so Willem explains that it's pretty far from Carolina. The guildmaster from Dolan is pretty knowledgeable about dragons and might be able to butcher it for them. They see that they'll have to go to the sea too, and Mukuta says it'd be two birds with one stone since Fel really wants to eat seafood. Mukuta says goodbye to the townspeople, and he, Fel, and Sui begin the journey. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.